guilt as a personhood blocker. If we think about life as a ever evolving, ever expanding, ever enriching process, there are things we can do to help that process, and there are things we can do that hinder that process and keep us stagnant. One of the phenomenon that tends to keep us stagnant and not on the path of growth to our full personhood is the phenomenon of guilt, because guilt has many manifestations. The one particular manifestation that comes to mind right now from guilt is self-punishment. What ends up happening is because of the deep-seated feelings of inadequacy and other things, we will seek out support and often cause relationships that are damaging. And sometimes it's a passive accepting of a damaging relationship and then continuing to persist because of a feeling of needing to be punished for some underlying feeling of guilt. That's one end of the spectrum, I guess, all the way to the end of the spectrum where someone would intentionally antagonize and engage another person in order to be abused, so to speak. Not abused in the sense of that they deserve being beat up or anything, not in that way, but in the way that a hostile interaction is something that's desired because of its negativity, because it's an act of punishment, without knowing it may be on the surface, but it's an act of self-punishment to set up this negative situation. And really at its root, underlying that is the feeling of guilt, and it keeps one stagnant in that process of guilt punishment, and away from further development. Another difficulty is that the guilt usually does not have a one-to-one relationship with the punishment, meaning the guilt is an underlying, all-pervasive, very much large, foundational kind of a thing, and then the punishments end up being just these specific what have you, so it's difficult to trace the punishment directly to the feeling of guilt, and so that takes a bit more work. Now, how you get rid of that guilt, that's another conversation. But it's enough at this point to recognize that because of it, quite often we accept, seek, and find ourselves in situations where we're being punished, but we need not do that.